Thank you all for coming back to the Marisol Nichols podcast. And here is part 2 of the incredible interview with Callahan Walsh from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. When I toured the facilities, this was, again, a while back, but one of the things that I was really blown away by was there's one floor in the center, and perhaps you can talk about it, where so these children were going missing, as you explained, right? And there was a link between the missing children and then the exploited children, that they were being sold for sex or abused for sex. And then the rape was shown, on these pornography sites. And so there's one whole floor of the center where you have agents looking for these children by watching these horrific incidents of child sexual abuse material. But what is so amazing is that what I learned was that they could freeze the image, zoom in on a window in the image, what's outside that window, and all of these sort of tools. Can you speak a little bit about that to the audience?
Absolutely. It's the Child Victim Identification Program, CVIP. At the National Center, NCMEC, it's alphabet soup. So it's just like there's so many acronyms and initialisms out there. But that's CVIP, the Child Victim Identification Program, which is part of the cyber tip line. So to back up, the cyber tip line is a reporting mechanism for any suspected child sexual abuse that happens online. So that's any images of child sexual abuse, CSAM, or child pornography, grooming, incidents of grooming, luring, sextortion, which is a new trend we should talk about, something we didn't even have a word for a few years ago.
Absolutely.
Sex trafficking, sex tourism, any of these incidents of child sexual abuse are reported to us at the National Center through our cyber tip line. In fact, internet service providers like social media platforms and Google, Microsoft, they all report as well. But the public can make reports also. Last year in 2021, and our 2022 numbers will come out soon. Last year in 2021, we received over 29 million reports of suspected child sexual exploitation to our cyber tip line, which was an increase of 35% of just the year before, where we already saw a spike of about 25% from the year before that. And what started that spike was the pandemic. It was all these children at home experiencing increased screen time, parents having increased screen time, these exploiters having increased screen time. In fact, we saw chatter on the dark web amongst these child predators sharing tips and best practices, saying this is the best way to exploit a child. This is how you avoid detection from law enforcement. This is how you avoid detection from the parents. And we saw these numbers spike, including in every category, including online enticement, which doubled over 100%, which is very scary. This is those instances where children are being groomed and lured away from the home. But the vast majority of those reports are what you were talking about, where the images of child sexual exploitation, child sexual abuse material called CSAM, formerly known as child pornography. We took in millions and millions of files, both still images and videos. And in fact, it's just recently where video files are now exceeding the still images. In the past, it was still images. Now it's the more video files, because we all walk around with these and they have a high def camera, and the family computer used to be in the living room. But now it's in our pockets. The average age for a child to get their first cell phone is just 10 years old here in the United States. It goes into the bedroom with them at night. It goes into the bathroom with them. They know how to work that device. And they're often coerced by another individual online, oftentimes an adult, to take a sexually explicit image of themselves, to self-produce that image and send it to that exploiter. That opens up that child for a whole new host of other exploitation, back to the sextortion, what have you. Or you have the individuals who have access to children and take images of themselves engaging in sexual acts with children, uploading those to the internet. And these predators, these pedophiles, trade these images like baseball cards. They trade them. I'll give you I got this girl, blonde hair, blue eyes. She's 4.5. I got 150 pictures of her. I'll trade them for you, for your picture. They trade them back and forth. And so what we see is this trade, and we're oftentimes able to intercept these trades, right? And so what we do at the National Center is, once the images are discovered, they're sent to us. And the team that you were talking about, CVIP, the Child Victim Identification Program, these analysts, their job, it's a horrific job, a job I could never do,
I mean,
is to sit there all day, horrific, to sit there all day and look at these young children being sexually abused, to hopefully try to identify the child. Is this a known missing child to us? Have we seen this child in other images in the past? Who's the perpetrator? Can we get any identifiable information? Birthmarks, tattoos, a face maybe? Is there EXIF data on these images? EXIF data meaning, is there data on the back end of that image, like geolocation, serial number for the make and model of the phone or camera that it was taken on? We look at all these types of things to try to determine who's the child, who's the perpetrator, and when and where were these images taken, and can we rescue this child? That job is so difficult, I couldn't even imagine, but we have an incredible safeguard program where our CVIP analysts, they're switched, and they also receive mandatory monthly counseling, mandatory once a month. Anything that they need beyond that is provided as well for free. But we even provide counseling to the family and the spouses of these individuals, because oftentimes if this work is affecting them mentally, it's oftentimes they're only showing the signs at home. And so we actually bring in the spouses and train them to look for these red flags. Is your spouse, who has to deal with these images constantly, are they exhibiting this type of behavior, that type of behavior, so that they can spot that at home and try to intervene and make sure that their spouse is getting the needs, the resources that they need. So that team is a very difficult job, but it's incredible work that they do. So once that child is identified and it's gone through the CVIP team, we actually create a hash value for each and every single one of those images that come into the National Center. A hash value is basically a string of numbers, which is a fingerprint, is like a digital fingerprint for that image. It's a string of numbers that's unique to that image alone. We database those hash values, and we share those hash values out with internet service providers so that they can tell if any of those images were to cross their system that matched that hash value, it would be flagged, a report would be automatically created and sent back to the National Center so that nobody, so that you can mitigate other people at that service provider from having to look at that image and, verify, yeah, that's a horrible image. So it flags it automatically. The great part about that hashing system is there's no way to recreate the image from the hash. The hash value is it is what it is. It's just a string of numbers. But once that hash value is matched on the ISP side, then they'll say, hey, an image, was shared between these individuals, and a report has been sent. So that's, a large portion of the reports, again, to our cyber tip line. Again, over 29 million reports to the center last year alone. And I'm scared to see what the 22 numbers are.
Yeah. And just so the audience knows, this is just in the United States, because there's a whole other center, the International Center for Missing and Exploited Children, ICMEC, that does international. Yeah. So those numbers
they work on a lot of policy. ICMEC is great. They're a sister organization spurred out of our organization. We do take in a lot of international tips to our cyber tip line as well too. There is a lot of international work that we're doing at the National Center, and then ICMEC, great organization. They're really about policy. So taking how we do work at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children and try to recreate that in other areas and try to set up sort of national centers for missing and exploited children in other countries that need it as well. So it's a great, and they use all of our resources, all of our, the databasing and the numbers that we have, we give to ICMEC so they can take and say, hey, these are the numbers that we're seeing. It's an incredible organization that, again, a sister organization that really spun out of the work at the National Center. So while we operate independently, there's just an incredible amount of collaboration between the work that we do together.
Hold on, let me jump, because we haven't talked about sextortion yet, right? And that's something that we have to talk about, because I'm not sure if all parents are aware of it. You see it in the news. You're hearing about it slowly, but not fast enough and not broad enough. Yeah. So let's talk about this. Yeah. Yeah.
You're definitely not hearing it enough and as fast as it's exploding, because we're seeing it. We saw a 150% increase in just the past year. And for those who don't know what sextortion is, it's basically where an individual will blackmail a child for explicit content or monetary goods. And the leverage that they use is an already existing explicit image. So what an exploiter will do is they'll contact a child and they will groom the child, try to gain their trust, and by various means, either by pretending that there's somebody else, that someone that's their age or a different gender. Sometimes this grooming process can happen for days, weeks, months. Sometimes it's shorter than that. But it's about building and gaining the trust of that child to the point where that child feels comfortable enough to take a self-produced, sexually explicit image. Usually the explicit nature is that first image isn't extreme in explicit nature. Usually it's something topless or nude, and the child thinks they're sending it to their boyfriend, or sometimes these exploiters will use video games as a leverage, right? Say, oh, I'll give you 100 in-game coin, these type of coins, or this item, or what have you, whatever. They'll use any tactic possible to gain the trust of this child, to get that child to send them that first image. And once that child sends just that one image, then that exploiter knows they've got that child. And what they do is they blackmail that child and manipulate that child to send them more and more content, or provide the exploiter with monetary goods. And they do that by threatening the child and saying that they're going to expose the child, send these images to their school, to all their friends, to their family. You're going to be so embarrassed. You're going to hate yourself. You better send me the money. You better send me more photos. And the explicit nature becomes more and more extreme over time. We've seen these victims were sending tens of photos, hundreds of photos a night. We had a girl who we honored at our Hope Awards. She was sending her exploiter over 60 images a night out of fear, and it ramped up to 60. It didn't start at 60, but she was eventually sending him over 60 images a night, and finally came forward to her mother. And they were able to investigate this individual and find that he was living in his parents' house in Florida. He had over 380 other child victims that he was exploiting, that he was sextorting. And in fact, I co-host my father's we just ended our 4th season, but I co-host my father's show In Pursuit with John Walsh on investigation discovery. It's just like America's Most Wanted. We profile wanted fugitives. And before the commercial breaks, we feature a missing child as well. And so I had a case this season, Adrian Fierros. He was wanted out of California. He had 80 child victims that he was sextorting as well, too. He was sentenced to over 30 years in prison, but because of COVID, he was sent home temporarily. No idea why they would let him do that. He wasn't an upstanding citizen before the 30-year sentence. What makes you think 30 years over his head is going to make him all of a sudden start, obeying the law? He's, 20-something years old. He's got no job. He also lived at home with his mother. His brother is an MS-13. Of course, this kid's a flight risk. He's got no reason he's got to stick around. He doesn't have kids. He doesn't have a job. He doesn't have family. They send him home with an ankle monitor. What does he do? The first thing, he cuts it off.
Of course.
No shit. So looking for him, really want to get that guy. But the sextortion really is becoming this huge problem here in the United States. And what we're seeing is, in the past, it was and still is, the majority of victims are girls, are young girls who are being targeted. But the boys are starting to tick up drastically. And what we're also seeing with the boys is it's usually not for additional explicit content. It's usually for the monetary goods, like a gift card or a wire transfer, and it's happening much quicker. So the grooming process isn't as long. A lot of times these individuals will just pretend that they're a girl and say, hey, I'll send you a nude picture that they get somewhere else off the website, or off the internet. And the boy sends a nude photo back thinking he's sexting with this new girl he just met online. And the perpetrator says, I'm not that girl. I'm this guy, and I'm going to send these photos to your friends and your football team and all this if you don't hurry up and buy me an iTunes gift card and send it to me. And so it's happening so quickly with the boys that there really isn't a lot of time for intervention or reaction. And so unfortunately, because of that, we're seeing also a rise in suicides amongst these boy victims because they just feel trapped. They're so embarrassed. They feel like there's no way out. And this is not a mental health issue we're talking about here. These aren't boys who were suicidal before this happened, and this was just the straw that broke the camel's back. This was the anvil that was dropped from a 30 foot building that broke their back. These children weren't suicidal before. They were driven to this by a predator over in a short period of time. And so, parents, again, they really need to understand they have to talk to their kids about making safe and smart decisions, because it is about the child to make that decision. Parents can't always be there to say, over their shoulder going, oh yeah, no, don't talk to that person, or, oh yeah, it's okay, you can talk. Parents, they'll go blue in the face trying to track their child's digital breadcrumb trail down. Parents are trying to put dinner on the table at night. Not every parent grew up with the internet. They're not as tech savvy as their kids either. So it can be difficult. And that's why the National Center has such great prevention education resources. And that's why parents should know these resources exist, because it's really, you need to provide these resources to your kid, these education trainings to your kids, so they know how to spot these risky situations and learn how to avoid them. They need to be empowered to make that safe and smart decision.
That literally brings me to my next thing on my outline, which is, I've told people this before, and it's on our website, and I direct people to NetSmarts and KidSmarts, because like you said, not all parents are aware of this issue. And I talk about it all the time. And I tell parents, look, this is what I've done with my kid. This is what I've told my kid, tips and tricks. But it's better when you have an organization that has decades and decades and decades of experience with this to go, here you go, this is what you do. So if you don't mind giving the website and maybe just a few little things on that, I'm making you give speeches, and I apologize.
No, not a problem. I'm always happy to share this info. Anybody can go to missingkids.org and go to our education tab, and you can see both of the programs that you mentioned, KidSmarts and NetSmarts there. Those are two flagship child safety programs. KidSmarts is real world safety. That's really geared to our younger children. It's about abduction prevention, inappropriate touch. We've been analyzing attempted abductions at the National Center for over a decade. And so we're able to spot those trends, and we inform this prevention education like KidSmarts with the information that we get from our data. For instance, we know that the time of the day that a child is most likely to be abducted is between 2 and 7 p.m. when they're walking to or from a school-related activity. Is almost always going to involve a vehicle. The perpetrator is almost always going to have a car. And as I mentioned before, over 80% of the time when a child is able to get away, it's something they did proactively. So with KidSmarts, we use the 4 rules of personal safety, which is check first. So that's check with your parent or guardian before going anywhere or accepting anything. Take a friend. The buddy system is always a great thing. There's always, power in numbers. Tell people no. You have the ability as a child, you have the right to say no. If someone's making you feel sad, scared, confused, or uncomfortable, you have the right to a safe childhood. You have the right to say no. And lastly is to tell the trusted adult. If someone does try to grab you, someone tries to abduct you, kick and scream and go and tell a trusted adult what to happen. Those 4 rules of personal safety are so important. And, again, this is why it's geared towards the younger audience, because those 4 rules of personal safety are pretty good as you move on as well, too, right? As you get older, those really don't change as much. Now, when it comes to the online safety, which is our NetSmarts program, NetSmarts program has been around since 2001. I mean, that's the early ages of the internet. The internet looked a lot different back then. But of course, we've had to change those tactics and the prevention education messaging constantly. With KidSmarts, it's the kind of the similar same messaging, although with KidSmarts, if I can back up just a second, we don't teach stranger danger with KidSmarts. It's something that we've stopped teaching at the National Center. We still,
how come?
Because for multiple reasons. Child safety is more nuanced than just a rhyming phrase. Yes, it's easy to teach a child stranger danger. It rhymes. It's easy for them to understand, and we think it's easy for them to understand.
Sure.
But if you actually ask a child what they think a stranger looks like in that scenario, it's somebody who's mean and ugly.
Yep.
That's what they say.
Yes.
And that is not what an abductor always looks like. And so, and also, if a child is grabbed by a stranger and abducted, it's oftentimes a stranger that will come to their aid, come to their rescue if they're abducted. So children need to know that if they're being abducted by, let's say it's a relative that's abducting them, that's not a stranger. So what do they do? And everybody else is a stranger. So how does stranger danger help in that scenario? And in fact, there are more abductions where the child knows their abductor than stranger abductions. So again, we still talk to our children about being wary of strangers. If a stranger comes up and asks for directions, look for a lost puppy, candy, those lures haven't actually changed. So when we talk to kids and with that Kid Smarts program, it still is about being weary of adults, but it's also about learning who trusted adults are. Remember that story I talked about, Sammy, the 10-year-old? Yeah. Well, he knew a trusted adult is a store clerk with a name badge. That's why he went into that store and that woman who essentially is a stranger to him is the person that came to his aid. And so these cases are a little bit more nuanced than a rhyming phrase in stranger danger. And so that's why a program like Kid Smarts that uses the 4 rules of personal safety, check first, take a friend, tell people no, and tell a trusted adult. That's why those 4 rules are so important. So you have the Kid Smart side, which is real world safety, and then you have the online safety side, which is NetSmarts. NetSmarts does have resources for all age groups, right? From your youngest kids that are just getting online, that has simple messaging. It's not fear-based. It's easy for them to understand. We got to make it that
it's
way.
Animated. Yeah, for parents out there that are listening, it's animated. It's very, very child-friendly. It's not overwhelming. Yeah.
No, it looks like the cartoons the child be watching on a Saturday morning. I call it sticking vitamins in the junk food, if you will, because you got to keep them entertained, right? It's very easy to make safety corny and not cool, and so you gotta put it in a way and wrap it in a way that's entertaining for kids. And for the youngest, you're absolutely right. We have an incredible animated series called Into the Cloud. It uses Nettie and Webster, or brother and sister, and Clicky, our spokes robot for internet safety, and the dog router, and it's great. It's an incredible animated series. Put it on for your kids, and then we have additional resources, activity sheets, and other things that you can do with your kid that directly tie into the animated videos that they just watched to drive home those lessons.
Beautiful.
And so we have video games as well, and then of course the resources mature as the children mature. So for our teens, we're talking about sextortion, sexting, all that sort of stuff. But what I love about the National Center resources in prevention, it's not all about just don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. Because oftentimes as a parent or law enforcement, we don't find out about something that's happened until it's already happened. Right. And if you go out there looking for help and for resources on sexting, you're going to get a lot of prevention educations telling you how to tell your kids why they shouldn't do it. Well, what happens if they've already done it? Well, at the National Center, we have a tip sheet. It's a resource called "You Sent a Sext, Now What?" And it's for both parents and children. And it's to say, hey, okay, you did the deed. Now what do we do? How do we damage control this? And in fact, the National Center, we do have the ability to take these images down off social media platforms because of the partnerships that we've gained over the years. The earlier messaging before we had these partnerships and before we had the ability to do it was always, don't send those images because you'll never get that image off the internet. Right. And there still is some truth to that. However,
Pornhub?
because of the partnerships that we have, we're able to go out there and say, hey, this website, this image that you're hosting is a known image of child pornography. You need to take it down or face the consequences. You'd be surprised how quickly those images come down once they get that threat. So
I was going to ask you how, because I've had other people on here that have talked about trying to get their own images off, or they were trying to do it by themselves and just kind of ignored and whatever. But it does seem like the National Center has such well-known balls, for lack of a better word, that these internet service providers will have to listen.
Yeah, they'll be shamed. They'll be shamed, and they'll be outed by us if they don't play by the rules. And so if you know your child has sent a sexually explicit image, or you have yourself, go to our website. We can help you get those images down. It's not the end. There is life after these incidents. And look, we know children are going to send these nude images to their boyfriend and girlfriend. They have these high school relationships. They never last, or hardly ever last. And look, these children see oftentimes their parents exhibiting this behavior. People in the famous people that they look up to exhibiting this behavior. And so of course they're going to do it. And so that's why we're like, look, we need to have a resource that's like, all right, you did it. Now what are the next steps? Now how can you help safeguard you and your family the best that you can in this situation? So, whether it's the Kid Smarts program or Net Smarts, really some really great child safety education programming at the National Center. And I have to plug, we have a brand new program that just came out. I helped create it. It's called Safe to Compete. And it's a new program out of the National Center, and it revolves around child sexual abuse in youth sports. And what it is, it's education. Yeah, it's an education tool for parents. So they can go to safetocompete.org. You can still go to missingkids.org and find it there, but you can go to safetocompete.org directly to the website. And there's a ton of information. There's module for parents to learn about some of the things they should be looking for when choosing a youth sports organization that their children are going to participate in. So making sure they have policies like background checks for coaches and coaching staff.
Right.
If it's a travel team, that they have a policy where coaches aren't sharing hotel rooms with athletes. Things like this. And then we also, on top of that, we have a 30-minute training module. It's a training course for coaches and coaching staff to spot the red flags, learn how to report these issues, and how to come up with good policy to enact in some of these organizations. Because you have some very organized youth sports organizations that have some great trainings, very robust trainings, and long, 6, 7, 8, 12 hours of trainings that are required. But then you have some very loosely organized, more grassroots sporting organizations where it's just some parents that are coming together as coaches, a couple volunteers. And so, we know there's other good trainings out there. Safe Sport, in fact, is a great training for coaches and coaching staff. But this one is a little bit more bite-sized. It's a 30-minute training. Coaches and coaching staff can take it, a knowledge check at the end, so a little quiz, and then they get a certificate. And we actually worked with a law firm that's representing over 200 student child athletes who were victims of child sexual abuse throughout their youth sports career. And we used, again, those voices of those survivors to help inform the program. And it was just an incredible partnership we had to be able to access that many of these student athletes, to be able to, again, have them inform this programming with the real instances that they've gone through. So again, safetocompete.org. It's a great new program. Anybody out there that's listening, that's involved in youth sports, it's a parent, please go there, learn about the things that you should be looking for, and advocate for the program. Tell, whichever youth program that your kids are in, that the coaches need to take the Safe to Compete training. It's a great training. It's only 30 minutes. And the best part, again, as I mentioned before, everything we do, including Safe to Compete, is free. It's free.
I mean, what's not to like? It's funny because I was going to ask you, did this come out of the women's Olympic team? And then I realized, no, this has been happening for a long time. And the women's Olympic gymnastics just shed a light on it in a big way. So well done for developing that. First of all, you were phenomenal. Before I want to get this, and then is there anything else that, that we didn't cover that you would want either parents or teenagers to know? I think we've covered a lot. I've done a ton of episodes covering all of this, but you are amazing. And I'm so glad that my audience is able to be enlightened on what the center does, truly, because it's a phenomenal resource.
Thank you.
Let me ask you this. What can we do to help?
Well, I think just continue to spread the word of the resources that we have at the National Center. We're a 4 out of 4 star charity on Charity Navigator. It's because we spend about 92 to 96 cents of every dollar directly on our programs. It doesn't leave a lot of meat on the bone for marketing and promotion and things like that. And so it is difficult for us to get the word out. Oftentimes we create these great resources, and those who know about the National Center, they come time and time again. But those who don't know about the National Center need to know, because oftentimes, even if some people know a bit about the center, oftentimes we don't have parents who come to us until they're in a situation
late.
where it's too late and they're desperate for our help and we're looking for their missing child. Please, the National Center has tons of resources for your children, for your family before that stuff ever happens. Look for our prevention education programs, talk to your kids about making safe and smart decisions, use these teachable moments, and continue to advocate for the resources at the National Center. Post missing children's images on your social media feed and pay attention to Amber Alerts. Don't turn them off on your phone.
Yes.
Pay attention to those. Please don't turn them off. If you're getting one of those, because we're the ones who send out Amber Alerts through the wireless emergency alert. That I know it's obnoxious, the beeping you get on your phone, but there's a reason. If you're getting that, it's because you're in the direct vicinity of where that child went missing, or along the corridor in which the abductor could be taking that child. So please, if you're out on, I get it. If you're in bed, it's 3 a.m. Okay, you probably don't know where that missing child is. But if you're out on the streets, if you're seeing it, keep your eyes open, look up from your phone, eyes and ears. You could be the reason that child is recovered. All it takes is one person to spot that child. Amber Alerts have helped in the recovery of over 1,100 children, a great example of technology harnessing the power to bring home children faster than ever before. So, look for these things. Use these prevention education programs, pay attention, post on social media, be an advocate, help us recover missing children, and help us fight exploitation.
But I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because we completely forgot to talk about that. And it's a thing that I tell people all the time. I'm like, no, look at it. Look at the picture of the car. Look at the picture of that kid. Absolutely. Yep. So thank you for mentioning that. Well, real quick, why don't you actually take us into how Amber Alert started?
Right. So Amber Hagerman. Yeah. So Amber Alerts were created after a young girl who was abducted and murdered named Amber Hagerman. And unfortunately, she was murdered, but in her honor, this system was created. And as we mentioned, oftentimes meaningful change comes out of tragedy, in the way my brother's disappearance really changed the way we started looking for missing children here in the United States. Amber's abduction and her murder was a change in the way we harness technology to look for missing children. And it's really an incredible program. It's helped recover over 1,100 children since its inception just a few years ago. And most people know the Amber Alerts from what they get on their phone. It's distributed by us at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Most people get it through WEA, which is the Wireless Emergency Alert System. We send it out. It's the noise that makes on your phone, and people are then made aware of these Amber Alerts in their area. And what I really want to stress to the audience is, please don't turn off Amber Alerts on your phone. I know sometimes they can go off at 2, 3 in the morning. Unfortunately, these bad guys don't operate within business hours. But if you are getting that Amber Alert to your phone, it's because you're in the direct vicinity of where that child went missing, or along the corridor in which we believe that the abductor may be taking that child. So please, if you're getting that Amber Alert, pay attention. If you recognize the child, if you see that it's a car with a license plate, you're on the road, be scanning, be looking for that license plate, that make and model of the car. It really is again a great example of technology being harnessed to bring home children faster than ever before. And so how it all really works is that although it's distributed by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, by NCMEC, we're not the ones who authorize it. So meaning that an Amber Alert is authorized state by state. We live in this country of 50 small countries, and of course, each one of them does it differently. So each state does their Amber authorization a little bit differently, but most of them have what's called an Amber coordinator, an Amber Alert coordinator. It's a member of the law enforcement whose job it is to authorize and make sure that the criteria to activate an Amber Alert, or to authorize an Amber Alert, has been met. And so that's why sometimes we'll see people reaching out and say, hey, NCMEC, how come you didn't send an Amber Alert out for this kid? And we have to say, hey, we're not the ones who authorize it. We have to wait for the authorization from law enforcement. And oftentimes, if there is a missing child case that wasn't authorized by law enforcement, it's because not because they didn't want to do it. It's because they have protocol, and perhaps a missing child case didn't reach the criteria that it takes to authorize an Amber Alert. So in some states, you have to have the make and model of the car, you have to have the license plate. If they don't have that information, sometimes they won't put out an Amber Alert for that child, which can be unfortunate. But at the National Center, not only do we send these Amber Alerts out through the wireless emergency alerts that that you get on your phone, but we also work with traditional media, so local news agencies, and whenever there's an Amber Alert that's going out, we contact local media. We contact the trucking industry, digital billboard industry, so the digital billboards you see on the highway, and we other social media platforms as well. In fact, Facebook, we have Amber Alerts that go out through Facebook, and what's great about those, including the traditional media and the digital billboards, which is a little bit better than the WIA alert. WIA doesn't have the technology to put an image of the missing child in that alert. Facebook posts and the media and the digital billboards, if we have an image of that child, which we almost are always getting that image, we'll add that to the Amber Alert, which only increases the likelihood that that child will be recovered. So the Amber Alerts are WIA on your phone, but also on a few other outlets that we distribute these Amber Alerts to. And we do have another program, a supplementary program to Amber Alerts. It's called the ATOM program. Anybody can go to our website and sign up for the ATOM program. You sign up just with your email, and that is a distribution. Well, it's another acronym, although it's named after my brother. It is an acronym for the Automated Delivery of Alerts on Missing Children. So the ATOM program sends out our missing children's posters geo-targeted based off of the IP address that you've signed up for in that with your email. So the email address that you sign up for, in that inbox, you'll receive missing children's posters from the National Center, which are geo-targeted to your geographic location. So you're not getting images from all over the country. It's just in your area. And a lot of businesses sign up to that program. Absolutely. It's incredible. A lot of businesses sign up. One office coordinator will sign up for it. And then every day when they get a new alert, they'll print it out and they'll put it in the back room, or they'll put it at the, checkout or what have you. And this allows us to put out alerts on missing children that may not have met that criteria for Amber, where we still say, hey, this is still a really critical missing children's case, may not have elevated to Amber Alert or met that criteria for whatever reason, but we're still going to blast it out through our ATOM program. And we also take a look at cases that, maybe aren't getting the media attention that we think this case deserves. We've seen, especially recently, the media picks up the blonde-haired and blue-eyed kids who go missing all the time. But the black and brown kids do not get the same attention as their white counterparts, and that needs to change. And so we can help direct and change the way that attention is getting to these cases by saying, hey, we know this case isn't getting enough attention. We're going to blast it out through the ATOM program, and we're going to blast it out through social media and try to get as many eyeballs on this case as possible. So so the Amber Alerts, great program, and you want to dig deeper, sign up for the ATOM program as well.
Callahan, that was incredible. Thank you. Thank you.